father adopts German Shepherd for his daughter in a wheelchair. What the dog did shocked all. It was a quiet Tuesday evening, the kind where everything feels still, yet something is stirring. John Patterson drove home from the auto shop, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. The rhythmic beat of the windshield wipers was interrupted by a sudden flash of movement through the window of the Denver Animal Rescue Center. There, in a sunlit corner, a young girl in a wheelchair laughed, her hand gently petting a German Shepherd. John's heart caught in his chest. It wasn't just the dog's calm demeanor or the girl's smile. It was something deeper. A promise, a possibility, something that could change everything for his daughter, Emily. John had never believed in coincidences. He had always thought that everything happened for a reason. But tonight felt different. As he parked the truck outside their modest home, he couldn't shake the image of that dog, the connection between the child and the animal, and the hope that glimmered there. "Sarah, I was thinking," John began, his voice hesitating as he sat down at the dinner table. "What if we got Emily a dog? A service dog, one who could help her, be her friend, someone who doesn't see her wheelchair first, but her heart." The silence at the table stretched, thick and heavy. Sarah looked up, her brow furrowing with a mix of confusion and concern. A dog? She knew how tight their budget was, the bills piling up, Emily's medical expenses never-ending. "A dog, John?" Sarah asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can barely keep up with everything as it is. You know how much we're already sacrificing." But Emily's eyes, they lit up the moment she heard the word dog. A smile broke through her small face, her blue eyes twinkling. "A dog? Daddy, could we really get a dog?" Her voice trembled with hope, fragile but undeniable. John reached out, placing his hand gently on Emily's. "Not just any dog, sweetheart. A special dog, one who's been trained to help kids like you." But Sarah, ever the practical one, couldn't help but voice her concerns. "John, it's not just the cost. There's a lot we don't know about dogs like that. And what if it's too rough with her? What if it's too much?" John wasn't giving up. "It's a trained dog, Sarah. We've seen what these dogs can do. We can give Emily the chance to have a friend who will always be there for her. Someone to walk with her when we can't." That night, after Emily was tucked into bed, Sarah and John sat together in the dark. The weight of their decisions felt heavier than ever. "Are we crazy for even considering this?" Sarah whispered, her voice breaking as the doubt crept in. "Maybe we are," John replied softly. "But sometimes crazy is exactly what we need. Emily needs someone who sees her, not just her wheelchair." The very next Saturday, Emily, Sarah, and John made the journey to the rescue center. It was a place filled with promise and uncertainty. John had already made up his mind. Emily needed more than just a family. She needed a companion who would show her that the world could be kind, that she could be loved just as she was. As they entered the shelter, they were greeted by Karen Matthews, the director, who seemed to know exactly what they were looking for. She led them through a long hallway lined with cages, each containing a dog with its own story to tell. But then they reached the last kennel, and everything stopped. Mux, the German Shepherd, sat tall, his amber eyes focused solely on Emily. He was larger than Sarah had expected, his coat a rich blend of black and tan. But there was something about him, something dignified, quiet. His eyes weren't just focused on Emily. They were searching, understanding. "He's different," Karen said quietly, her voice soft but sure. "Max has been through a lot, but his training is impeccable. He's exactly what you're looking for." Emily, who had always been reserved around new things, wheeled herself closer to the kennel. Without hesitation, she whispered, "Hi, Max," her fingers reaching out to the bars. Max stood, his massive frame moving with a surprising grace. He extended his paw, gently placing it on the armrest of Emily's wheelchair. It was as though he understood her need, her uncertainty. He wasn't just a dog. He was something more. John and Sarah exchanged a look, one that spoke volumes. This was it. This was the moment that would change their lives forever. Karen led them to a quiet meeting room, a soft space where Max and Emily could interact without the pressure of the outside world. Emily was the first to speak, her small voice trembling with wonder. "Can we keep him?" John looked down at Emily, his heart full. "We'll make sure he's the right fit. If we do this, we'll make it work." Over the next hour, Max demonstrated exactly why he was different. He helped Emily in ways that words couldn't capture. When she dropped a toy, he fetched it without hesitation, his movements calm and deliberate. He responded to her commands with eager attention, his steady presence offering her something no one else could: peace. But there was a deeper understanding between them, something that neither Emily nor her parents fully realized at the time. Max had found her, and Emily had found her protector. And so began their journey, one that would reshape everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and resilience. The morning after they brought Max home was the beginning of something new, a transformation neither John nor Sarah could have anticipated. They had made the decision. Max was no longer just a possibility. He was part of their family, the missing piece that would change everything. The first few days were filled with the excitement of new routines. Max was everything they had hoped for: gentle, attentive, and intuitive. He was especially careful around Emily, always aware of her limitations and never pushing her beyond what she could handle. But there were moments, small moments, that spoke volumes when Max showed his true worth. Max had already proven himself to be a guardian in those early days. The moment Emily was frustrated, Max was there, his eyes soft and understanding. When her hands trembled during her daily exercises, Max would gently nudge her, as if telling her to keep going. He wasn't just a dog. He was a partner in her healing. But not everyone saw it that way. As Max adjusted to life with the Pattersons, the neighbors began to notice. It was Mrs. Wilson from next door who first voiced her concern. A German Shepherd? And for a disabled child? "John," she called from across the yard one morning, "are you sure about this? That dog's too big, too unpredictable. Not a good match for Emily." John stood at the edge of their porch, Max calmly sitting beside him. "He's been trained, Mrs. Wilson. He's here to help Emily. He's not dangerous." Still, doubt lingered. The whispers of concern began to spread through the neighborhood, and soon they weren't just talking behind closed doors. They were speaking openly. The rumors swirled. Mux, they said, was a threat. But John wasn't backing down. A week later, the Pattersons took Max to Emily's first physical therapy session with him present. Nicole, Emily's therapist, was skeptical. She had seen dogs in therapy before, but none like Max. "We can't afford any distractions," she warned, her eyes carefully assessing the dog's every move. But Max didn't need to be told twice. He sat, still and patient, by Emily's side as she began her stretches. When Emily's muscles seized up, as they often did, Max was there immediately, his sturdy frame offering support. He moved his body in the perfect position, standing steady while Emily held on to him for balance. For the first time in months, Emily didn't ask to stop the session. "I can do it," she whispered through gritted teeth, drawing strength from Max's presence. That afternoon, the Patterson family celebrated. It wasn't just a victory in physical therapy. It was the first real sign that their decision was the right one. Max was more than a companion. He was a force that was helping Emily face her daily battles in ways no one had anticipated. But the true test came a few days later. It was a Tuesday when Emily fell. It wasn't Max's fault. He hadn't caused her to slip from her wheelchair, but he did everything in his power to prevent it. His quick reflexes were no match for the fall. From Mrs. Anderson's window, she saw it all. She didn't see Max's care, his attempts to cushion the fall. All she saw was a disabled child falling and a dog that couldn't be trusted. The call to animal control was immediate. The officer, Officer Martinez, was calm, but Mrs. Anderson's accusations were loud. "That dog knocked her down," she claimed. "He's dangerous." Emily, shaken but determined, spoke up from her father's embrace. "Max tried to stop me," she said, her voice strong for the first time. "He's my protector. He's my guardian angel." Officer Martinez studied Max, his concern evident as the dog stood by Emily, his amber eyes unyielding. After a few tense moments, he nodded. "This is a trained service dog," he said. "I've seen him with her. This dog is doing his job." That afternoon, Sarah and John held each other in silence. the weight of the situation pressing down on them. The criticism was mounting, but their resolve was unwavering. Max wasn't just a dog. He was their daughter's lifeline. The neighborhood had yet to understand what they did. They didn't see the bond between Max and Emily, nor did they understand the invisible battles she fought every day. The dog wasn't a pet. He was her partner, her guide, her protector. But soon, things began to change. The first shift came when Mrs. Thompson, the elderly widow next door, walked over with a plate of freshly baked cookies. "I was wrong," she said softly, handing over the treats. "That dog, he's not what I thought. I see now how much he watches over Emily." The next day, Mrs. Wilson, hesitant but clearly moved, stopped by to bring over some treats for Max. "I see him now," she admitted. "He's different. He's helping her." As the days went on, the neighbors began to change. The whispers that had once been filled with judgment were slowly replaced with understanding, and soon, their perception of Max as a threat shifted into respect. But the most important change was the one that began to occur in Emily. As the weeks passed, her confidence grew in ways no one could have predicted. With Max by her side, Emily began to do things she had never thought possible. She wheeled herself through the local park, not in fear, but with her head held high. She reached out to the children who once avoided her. For the first time in her life, Emily wasn't defined by her disability. She was defined by her strength, her courage, and the loyalty of the dog who had become her closest companion. The Pattersons had fought hard to find their place in a world that seemed to overlook them. They had fought for Emily's right to live without the stigma that often accompanied disability. They fought for her to be seen, not as a girl in a wheelchair, but as a little girl with dreams, with hopes, and with a heart full of love. But the battle didn't stop at their front door. The real challenge was outside, at Riverside Elementary School, where Emily's service dog, Max, was not yet fully accepted. The school had reluctantly allowed Max to accompany Emily, but only after endless paperwork, meetings, and special considerations. Principal Roberts had made his position clear, and it wasn't a comfortable one. The school wasn't sure they could accommodate a dog, especially not a German Shepherd. Emily's classmates, too, weren't sure what to make of Max. Some of the children, especially Tommy Anderson, were cruel. They whispered behind her back and made rude comments. But none of that mattered when Max was by her side. He was a constant, a protector, a friend. And when Emily was with him, she felt braver than she ever had before. One morning at recess, Tommy and his friends came up to Emily, their words sharp and mean. "Hey, wheelchair girl," Tommy sneered, kicking dirt as he approached. "Your dog's a danger. You shouldn't be at school. My mom says he's too big." Emily clutched her book tightly to her chest, her fingers trembling. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, the sting of his words cutting deeper than anything else. But she wouldn't let it break her. Max was by her side, as always, and he had already positioned himself in front of her, ready to protect her, his body taut with awareness. Max didn't growl. He didn't lunge. Instead, he stood tall, calm, and firm, his amber eyes watching Tommy with a quiet dignity. The other children who had gathered around began to murmur, unsure of what to do. Emily, feeling the weight of their eyes on her, spoke up with a voice stronger than any of them had ever heard. "Max isn't dangerous," she said, her words clear and firm. "He's my friend, and he's my helper." Tommy threw a stick toward Emily, daring Max to react. But the dog did not attack. He simply moved between the children and Emily, standing guard with an unwavering calm. The situation was escalating. The teachers, who had been watching from a distance, hurried over, but by the time they arrived, the damage had been done. "Look, the dog's gonna bite," one of Tommy's friends shouted, his voice filled with panic. It was Mrs. Benson, the playground monitor, who rushed over to intervene. "What's going on here?" she demanded. Her eyes flicked between Emily, Tommy, and Max. "What's all the shouting about?" Tommy, his face red with frustration, pointed accusingly at Max. "Your dog's gonna hurt somebody," he declared. Emily spoke up again, her voice trembling but strong. "That's not true. Max was protecting me. You were throwing things at us." The tension in the air was palpable. The school staff began questioning what had happened. But Principal Roberts soon arrived, his face stern. "Mrs. Patterson, we need to discuss this immediately," he said, his tone formal. The conversation in Principal Roberts' office was tense. Tommy's mother, Helen, had been called in to give her side of the story. She stood in front of the principal, clutching her purse like a shield, her face filled with righteous indignation. "This isn't a zoo," she insisted. "Your dog doesn't belong here, especially around my son." Sarah's voice was calm, but the words were heavy with the weight of truth. "Your son was bullying my daughter, and Max did exactly what he was trained to do: protect her. He's not a threat. He's a service dog." The back and forth continued, but Emily remained quiet, her hands clenched in her lap. She looked up at Max, who sat beside her, his gaze steady and comforting. She didn't need anyone else to defend her. Max was doing that already. The argument reached its peak when Sarah stood, her voice trembling with resolve. "What about Emily's safety? Does that matter less because she's in a wheelchair? Max helps her live a full life. He's not just a dog. He's her protector, her lifeline." Emily looked up from her wheelchair, her voice soft yet strong. "Max helps me be brave. He makes me feel safe. I don't want him to leave." The room fell silent, and for the first time, the adults, who had been so quick to judge and separate, realized something fundamental. Emily wasn't asking for special treatment. She was asking for respect. She wasn't just a child with a disability. She was a child who had the right to thrive, the right to be seen, and the right to have the tools to help her succeed. And Max? Max was the tool that would help her do it. For the Pattersons, the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be more hurdles, more challenges, and more moments of doubt. But every single day, Max proved that the bond between him and Emily wasn't just a friendship. It was the foundation of her healing, a lifeline that connected her to the world in ways no one could have predicted. The neighborhood's opinion of Max continued to evolve, slowly but surely. It wasn't just Sarah and John who had witnessed his dedication. The rest of the community was beginning to see it too. Mrs. Wilson, who had once questioned whether Max was too dangerous, was one of the first to change her mind. She'd watched him with Emily from her porch, seeing how patient and careful Max was, how he seemed to intuitively understand her needs. The shift was subtle at first. Max was no longer the dog to avoid, but it grew stronger as the weeks went on. But just when things seemed to be turning around, the pressure began to mount. One afternoon, Sarah was sitting in their living room, flipping through another pile of medical bills, when the phone rang. "And we're seeing some improvements," he began, his voice steady. "But I'm concerned. Her therapy sessions are becoming increasingly difficult. Her muscles aren't responding as we hoped. I think we need to adjust her routine. There's a chance we could be pushing her too hard." The words hit like a ton of bricks. Sarah's eyes blurred with tears, her hand gripping the edge of the table as she tried to steady herself. She had hoped so badly that Emily's progress was permanent, that the strength she was building would last. But now, it seemed as if everything was hanging by a thread. Her mind began to race. How could they keep going? How could they continue to afford these constant treatments, the therapy, the dog's special diet and care? It wasn't just their emotional strength that was being tested. It was their financial one, too. John came in from the garage, his hands still covered in grease from another long shift at the auto shop. He saw Sarah's face and knew something was wrong. He sat beside her, his hand resting on hers, as they faced the reality of their situation. "We can't afford to keep going like this," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "The bills are piling up, and we don't have much left. Maybe we should think about finding Max a new home. We could use the money from the adoption fee to pay for Emily's meds." John's heart sank at the thought. They had worked so hard to bring Max into their home, and the bond between him and Emily was undeniable. But Sarah's words were a reflection of the desperation they were both feeling. They didn't have the luxury of making emotional decisions. Every choice had to be weighed against the crushing reality of their circumstances. But then, as if sensing their distress, Max padded into the room, his eyes filled with concern. He laid his head gently in Sarah's lap, as if offering comfort in a moment of uncertainty. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. Mox, how can we even think about giving you up? You've helped Emily more than we could ever explain. It was in that moment, with Max by her side, that Sarah realized something crucial. They couldn't give up. Not on him, and not on their daughter. Max wasn't just a dog. He was the key to Emily's resilience. He had been with her through every challenge, every small victory, and he wasn't about to let them quit now. The Pattersons' financial struggles weren't over. In fact, they were far from it. But Sarah made a promise to herself that she wouldn't let their circumstances dictate their future. They would find a way. They always did. As the days passed, they began to feel a sense of unity, of strength in the face of their challenges. John took on more odd jobs, working long hours, his body weary, but his resolve firm. Sarah began selling off some of their belongings, old furniture, extra clothes, anything they didn't need. It wasn't easy, but it was a necessary sacrifice. Meanwhile, Emily's therapy sessions continued, and with each one, she grew stronger. Even when her muscles didn't cooperate, Max was there to encourage her. He helped her push through the pain, reminding her that she could always keep going, that giving up was never an option. But the breakthrough came unexpectedly. One afternoon, as Emily struggled to lift a block during therapy, Max, ever the protector, moved beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. The therapy assistant, Nicole, watched as Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself with Max by her side. Slowly, but with determination, Emily managed to hold the block for just a few seconds longer than usual. Nicole looked up, surprised by the progress. "You're getting stronger, Emily," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You're really doing it." Sarah's heart swelled with emotion. Her daughter, once so fragile, was proving that she could overcome even the most difficult obstacles. And it was all because of Max, because of the unwavering, unconditional support he provided. But even as Emily's physical progress was undeniable, there were still moments of doubt. One particularly rough day, Emily's muscles seized up unexpectedly during her routine. She fell, and before anyone could react, Max was there, his body braced to catch her, to protect her from the fall. Though he couldn't prevent it entirely, Max's quick thinking minimized the injury. The incident was a turning point for the family, not just because of the physical pain Emily endured, but because of the way Max responded. He was always there, always watching over her. He wasn't just a dog. He was her partner in the truest sense. Everything seemed to be falling into place, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when least expected. For the Patterson family, this test came on an ordinary day, an afternoon that would alter everything they thought they knew about strength, sacrifice, and love. It started like any other afternoon. Emily was practicing her physical therapy in a backyard, her focus unwavering as she maneuvered her wheelchair through the makeshift obstacle course John had set up. Max, ever vigilant, walked beside her, his eyes never leaving her for a moment. They were a perfect team. Max's movements were as graceful as Emily's were determined. Together, they defied the odds. But then it happened. A small, subtle misstep. Emily had just managed to stand for an impressive 30 seconds, using Max as her balance. She smiled with pride, but then disaster struck. The support bar that had been set up to help her stabilize began to give way. Emily fell backward with a sickening crack of the metal bar. Max reacted instantly, launching himself forward, but the momentum of the fall was too much. Emily's head struck the concrete patio with a jolt, and time seemed to slow. "Emily!" Sarah screamed, rushing toward her daughter. Panic surged through her as she reached Emily's side, seeing her daughter's lifeless body crumpled on the ground. John's heart stopped as he heard the crash. He dropped what he was holding in the garage and sprinted toward the backyard, his legs heavy with dread. The sight of Emily lying motionless brought him to his knees. "Emily, please, baby, wake up." His voice cracked, desperation creeping in. Max, now lying beside Emily, whined anxiously, his protective instincts kicking in. He nuzzled her face gently, but it was clear the situation was dire. Sarah, using her nursing training, immediately knelt by Emily's side, checking for any signs of life. She could feel the rapid pulse under Emily's skin, and a sense of relief washed over her. Emily was alive, but still unconscious. "Don't move her," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. "Call 911, John. Now." As John dialed, Sarah held Emily's hand, her tears silently falling as she whispered prayers over her daughter. Max remained by Emily's side, never leaving her. It was as if he knew the gravity of the situation, as if he understood what was at stake. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but they hesitated when they saw Max standing close, unwilling to move. The tension was palpable. The dog was not the issue here. It was the policies. One of the paramedics raised an eyebrow, hesitant to allow Max to remain with Emily. "He's her service dog," John said quickly, his voice firm but full of urgency. "He saved her life. Please, don't make him leave." The senior paramedic stepped forward, looking at Max. "Let him stay," she said, after a brief moment of thought. "If he's been trained, he's earned his place." John felt a rush of gratitude for the understanding. The ride to Denver Memorial Hospital was long, even though the distance was short. Emily's condition was still precarious, and the medical team kept a close eye on her as Max lay beside her stretcher, his head resting on her lap. The dog had not left her side for a second, even during the chaos. He had been her lifeline through it all. As they arrived at the hospital, a new battle began. One that wasn't about Emily's physical injuries, but about whether Max could stay with her in the trauma room. A nurse, her face hard, shook her head when she saw Max. "No dogs allowed," she stated firmly. "Hospital policy." "Max stays," Sarah said immediately, her voice unwavering. "He's her service dog. He's more than just a dog. He's part of her medical team." There was a moment of tension before Dr. Catherine Chin, the physician overseeing Emily's care, stepped in. "He stays," she said, her authority clear. "I've worked with service animals before. They alert us to things we might miss. In this case, we need him." Max, sensing the gravity of the situation, positioned himself carefully at Emily's side, never leaving her. His amber eyes locked onto Emily's face, alert to any changes, and just moments before the monitor showed a drop in her oxygen levels, Max began to whine urgently, pawing gently at Emily's side. "Get a chest series stat," Dr. Chin called out, her voice filled with urgency. The medical team scrambled, responding to the silent alert Max had given them. Hours passed, but the tension never dissipated. Sarah and John sat in the waiting room, their hands tightly gripped together as they stared at the door to the trauma room. Max never moved. He remained close, watching the door, his ears alert to any sign that Emily might need him. Then, the administrator arrived. Richard Morton, the hospital administrator, approached the family with a firm expression. "We can't allow the dog to stay in the pediatric ward," he said. "It's against policy." Sarah stood up, the exhaustion in her bones giving way to a strength she didn't know she had. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "This isn't just about policy. This is about my daughter's life. Max has saved her life already twice. He's not just a pet. He's a medical necessity." Richard Morton shook his head, the rules weighing heavily on him. "It's not that simple." "But it is," Sarah retorted. "You see, Max isn't just a dog. He's her protector, her lifeline. If you remove him from her, you're not just breaking policy, you're breaking the bond that's keeping her alive." In the end, it wasn't the hospital administrator's decision to make. After more arguments, support from medical staff, and a rally of disability rights advocates who fought for Emily's right to have her service dog with her, the hospital caved. Max would stay. The day Emily woke up, it wasn't just the sound of her parents' voices that filled her ears. It was the soft whine of Max, his head resting gently on her chest, his body warm and reassuring against hers. In this chapter, the Patterson family faces their ultimate test, a moment where not just their physical resilience, but their emotional strength is challenged. It's a reminder that life's most difficult tests are often the ones that force us to fight not just for ourselves, but for those we love. Max showed that true love isn't passive. It's an active force, a commitment to be there no matter the cost. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight for what mattered most to you? How did you find the strength to keep going? Share your story in the comments below. If you found inspiration in Emily and Max's journey, subscribe to HeartForce for more powerful stories of hope, love, and transformation.